Thank you, Professor Langdon, for your very interesting point of view. That is, in a sense, a surprise for us, but it's a very interesting way of investigation. And thank you for letting us know. This afternoon is dedicated to is in part dedicated to the works of teachers of Bauhaus, and the next talk is by Thomas Haupt and Valerie John. No? Made a mistake? Yes, the speaker is Valerie John, and the title is Material and Form, Anaerobic Degradation and Biodegradable Materials, Development of a Test Method for Laboratory and Field. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So my topic, as introduced before, is anaerobic degradation of biodegradable materials, as you can all see here, for example, these plastic cups. I am working for Professor Kraft, who is the chair of biotechnology and resources management at Bauhaus University, and he unfortunately cannot be here today, but he is saying hello to everybody. I want to give you a short introduction. You probably all know these kind of pictures that go around the world. In the modern society, we are using plastic nearly everywhere in our daily life. But what happens with these products if we don't need them anymore? And how can we get rid of it? And the amount of waste and of plastic we are producing is increasing every day drastically. And especially in newly industrialized countries, we find plastic waste nearly everywhere in nature. But how can we stop this pollution of our nature without banning these plastic products from our daily life? So one possible way is to make these plastics biodegradable. But not every bioplastic is the same. For example, there are biopolymers that are made from regrowing material but are not degradable, or the other way around, they are degradable but made from fossil resources. So be careful about these terms. And the most promising bioplastic is the one that is biodegradable and made from regrowing material, and that are the ones that I'm going to talk about. In the course of the project I am talking about, we consider the biopolymers that have the greatest market share in the world and which are most relevant in Europe. These are cellulose hydrate, which is used for food packaging, thermoplastic starch, which is used for waste bags. I think you all know these from the shops here in Italy. And polylactic acid, which is used to produce tableware. The named bioplastics are all certified as biodegradable. And in Europe there are many, many labels and standards that are certifying biodegradable products, especially the European norm 13432, on which most of these labels are based. But this norm is focusing on the compostability of these bioplastics, what means that they are treated in composting plants, and it's a degradation of the organic material in the presence of oxygen. But the norm is not sufficient for the anaerobic degradation in biogas plants. And because of the growing number of biogas plants, it is very, very important to implement a method that is treating the oxygen-free treatment, the fermentation in such biogas plants. What brings us to the aim of the project I am talking about, and yeah, it was to create a basis for the implementation of such a testing method, which is adequate to the compostability label. The European norm 13432 I talked about is dealing with 4 main topics. And 2 of them, the test for complete biodegradability and the test for compostability, were took to focus on the project. And on the basis of these tests, lab scale and industrial scale experience were carried out to develop such a test procedure. And the difference of between biodegradability and compostability or disintegration is that disintegration only means the mechanical decomposition of the material to smaller pieces, whereas the degradation means the elementary decomposition. So in this case, to carbon dioxide, water, and biomass. For composting, there are different demands that are formulated. For example, for the biodegradability, within 6 months there has to be a degradation rate of 90% or more of the treated material compared to a reference substance. And for disintegration, the norm says that after the composting process, no polymer components should be visible anymore. So here you can see that disintegration not necessarily means that the material is broken down to its elements. So it's not really degraded, but only in smaller pieces and not visible anymore, but still there. And for the anaerobic degradation, these demands has to be developed. To define the test conditions, we have to consider the technological state of the art of the anaerobic waste treatment. And there's no uniform recycling concept for biological waste, what means that there are several possible treatment methods. Therefore, different approaches have to be considered. For the general biodegradability, a wet medium, a thermophilic operation, what means high temperatures, around 50 degrees, and a continuous stirring to homogenize the substrates describe optimal conditions. But these optimized conditions are not, do not reflect the conditions on real treatment plants. Therefore, lab-scale experiments under semi-optimal conditions and also industrial-scale experiments on a real treatment plant has to carry it out as well and are very essential for such a experiment. To verify the lab scale and technical scale experiments that were carried out works on a real plant, like you can see underneath. So I only want to talk about some exemplary results. The results for the lab scale experiments under optimized conditions show that CH, the cellulose hydrate, has a degradation rate of 100%, so it is very well degradable under anaerobic conditions. But TPS, thermoplastic starch, has a rate of only 20%, so it is not degradable compared with the reference substance. PLA shows in the end a good degradation rate of about 70%, but the degradation starts very delayed, so there is a general degradation, but not under practical conditions. And these pictures show the products TPS and PLA after the anaerobic treatment, and you can see that at lab scale as well as at industrial scale, the products are neither degraded nor disintegrated. And as a conclusion, we can outline that for composting, certified biopolymers behave different under anaerobic conditions. And in this project, a testing scheme was developed which aims at helping to define or to develop a certification procedure which aims at at biopolymers that should be degradable under anaerobic conditions and not under aerobic conditions. So, now the waste management has the chance to define which materials are biodegradable and which are not. So this is a very great chance and we should take that. And now to come to an end, so I want to say that when I came to Rome a few days ago, I was kind of surprised to saw all these biodegradable bags in the shops, and I want to say that this is only kind of good, because you should know that when you go to a shop, it's better to bring your own bag, and please, if you go to the shopping center next time, please bring your own reusable bag. And it's the most important thing is to avoid and prevent the waste and not to substitute it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Valerie, for your talk. And I wish once again underline that this is a very interdisciplinary meeting, and now I am introducing the next talk, in which we come back to art and sculpture, showing a different approach to the matter. And speakers is, the authors are Linda Schumann and Florian Viking, the Bauhaus 100 traveling exhibition. In third cases, reassessing material, sculpture and installation. Thank you.
All right. We want to give you an overview about our exhibition you can see in Sala Uno from tomorrow on. And the idea of this exhibition is to show the richness and the complexity of used materials. It's a mobile exhibition in suitcases as a global nomadic strategy. So each of those artworks travels with one suitcase with us in the plane or in the car, or however we decide to travel. The suitcases are not simple just a transport instrument. They can be part of the artwork or a plinth of the artwork, or used in any other way. So we made the students use those kind of traveling and nomadic tools in this exhibition, as you can see later on. This limitations was also an orientation as global artists, a challenge and a possibility. The general goal is to communicate the multi-faced values of used materials, because we also used, for example, old suitcases and of course other materials, and refers to this material called garbage, junk, trash or sewage. And we want to show that in these materials you also can find a big aesthetic, yet narrative and energetic potential. Today we also wish to give you an overview over our 2-year-long project with the students from the Bauhaus University, also as an educational cooperation, an exhibition experience, and even more. It all started in 2017. So in collaboration with the environmental engineers, which existed already before, thanks to Liz Bachhuber, we went through a lot of exhibitions and excursions, and we took a variation of groups of students, so we always don't travel with the same students, we always take as many people as possible, and we try to introduce them to the topics of the other discipline. So what you can see here are impressions of a laboratory test the artists took, and it was an insight for us in the work of the engineers. So what you can see here, we tested the fate of coffee-to-go cups, and we tested how biodegradable they are, as you heard before. Yeah. So, as you all know, these coffee-to-go cups are a big problem. We always use them for just a single minute or 2 minutes, but several times a day. So, and most often they said, okay, they are degradable or whatsoever. So we use the techniques they have in their laboratory to test this. And they showed us how they would test things, how they work in this kind of field. And we as artists, we could become little researchers for an hour, and we figured out that those cups, due to the lamination inside the cup, is of course not biodegradable. Later on, we also did an excursion and visited a biogas plant in Fulda, Germany, to find out what happens to the waste that we throw every day. There we learned that a lot of plastic is misthrown because of non-recycling, and which lands all in the organic waste. And every year there is more than 3% of plastic which cannot be dissolved out of the garbage and will be filled into the land and then used on the fields. But of course our visit also contains some aesthetic moments. Processing these impressions and in correspondence with artistic strategies and measures, it led to the first results for our exhibition and some pre-works. Here you see a work of a student, Samira Gebhardt, and it's a combination of two oppositing materials. You have this really soft and fragile pink paper that she found in an old house, combined with this rather hard and stable material, concrete. Other work that was created in preparation for this exhibition is from Michael Merkel. And this is an inlay work made from old X-ray pictures on an X-ray viewer. So our exhibition started in Barcelona, in the University of Barcelona. And the objects we selected for the exhibition all have either a biographical or political relevance to the artists coming with us, and the works range from cricket collections to material experiments. The artists investigate not only the intrinsic value, but also specific iconography of each material, which, in combination, transport a particular content. The use of found materials is also a form of recycling. Next one. What you can see here is the preparation, the coordinating, curating, and of course installing of our exhibition in the gallery of the university in Barcelona. What you can see here is what I mentioned before. All these artworks come in suitcases, and of course all those suitcases, they show the different characteristics of all those artworks. So we first brought them all in, and they variate from old vintage suitcases to metal suitcases to wooden boxes and so on. So I will show you some artworks that you unfortunately, but unfortunately there wasn't. I want to show you some artworks of the exhibition and tell you a little bit about it. So this work that you can see here is called Self-Portrait with Suitcase, and it's made by Professor Les Bachhuber. And they are layered fragments of memory that are part of her identity that she carried around with her when she moved from place to place, restlessly searching for a home. So this is a detail you can see from the artwork, and around these wooden sticks, which is also used material, are letters she wrote or she received, or even printed documents from her work in university and other places. This work, it's called Untitled by Max Weissel, And it's an interactive piece, and it invites the public to use the crank, and with this crank activating a hydraulic system, which made the soft yet liquid elephant skin-like material move like a breathing chest. This mass that you see, here, like this would just slowly move up and down like it would be breathing, like a really nice way. But the mass consists of unrecyclable oil on top of healing clay. Another piece in this X-ray collage series, also from Michael Merkel, is showing the lower parts of a crucified Christ. This you also can see in Sala Uno. This work made from rubbish and organic material was created by a Japanese exchange student. And when she left to study abroad, her family planted a tree so they could hug the tree and embrace the tree while she was gone. And she told us this one quote: "Taking care of your tree makes me feel more connected to you than writing you an email."
This is my work. It's called How It All Started, and I recycle memories captured on slides of the first holiday my parents took together to Spain in 1970. And I worked with a slide projector to project the original slides from the 70s onto two VW rear window mirrors. My parents went with a Beetle to Spain. Every mirror has its own angle, and so the projection shows distorted and blurry pictures. And my idea is to show our way of remembering memories. Some are crystal clear, others are very blurry, and we forgot all about them. And maybe you forget the good times and the bad times or the troubled times. So I question the starting point of the myth of our happy family life. Why and how did all this end up in bitterness and divorce?
Okay. But of course, we didn't just show our art pieces, but we also wanted to see more of the city in a different way. So we were also interested in different infrastructural sites. So we went to a sewage treatment plant in Llobregat. And here we learned the difficulties in Barcelona about salt water and fresh water, and also about different techniques filtering water and which works with which not, and where the problems money-wise actually. Our program also included a rich diversity of activities from both fields. So we also went together to see different art exhibitions, so like one in the Barcelona Museum of Contemporary Art, and two cross-disciplinary ones. One of us is what you see here to the left, or to your right. It's called After the End of the World at CCCB. It's an exhibition about the Earth of 2017, irreversibly transformed into an Anthropocene planet after 2 centuries of human impact on natural systems. The other exhibitions we saw, who not just contained artworks but also cross-media artworks, is Behave, which you can see on this side, both pictures. It was at the Fondation Miro, and it showed pieces in a range of different media who invite visitors to engage in sensorial experiences focused on the variety of aspects in the world of bees. So as a visitor, you could actually be a bee in that moment, and what you can see in one picture down here, they had this spheres with flowers, and you could put your hat in and you could see the world from a perspective of a bee and smell the flowers and have this experience. Furthermore, we also rented bikes to encounter the city's cycle path network, which we were told is really great, and we tried it, and we were a group of, I think, 13 people, and it was extremely hard to cycle with such a large group through Barcelona and all the traffic. But it was definitely worth. Yeah. Another part of our project back in Weimar were perceptual drawing exercises with artists and engineers. They were held by Professor Les Bachhuber and Nina Lundström, other artists, and me, because we believe that the ability to draw depends on the ability to see. Drawing requires only 5 perceptual skills, we think, and they are the perception of edges, of space, of relations, of light and shadow, and of course, the whole together. So the exercises are about processing visual information different to the way we would normally do in everyday life. So using your brain and focusing on the details you normally would overlook. So our techniques are based on Betty Edwards, but we don't want to teach people how to draw right. We don't think there is a right way to draw. We want to teach people how to see. This is what we think is important here. So it's not about drawing perfectly or otherwise. We want to focus on seeing, on understanding, and understanding the world, all these details, and also appreciate the mistakes as a source of new ideas and inspiration. So drawing actually helps all our senses, and to see with all our senses, and to become more observant to every detail. Okay, good. That's okay. So what we were trying with the different workshops we had in this drawing exercises was to loose up, actually, like to find a good way of starting to draw, even though you might think you cannot draw. So there was one exercise you see here, the bigger picture. It's called body extensions, because normally when you learn how to draw, you have a certain way of holding a pencil, and we wanted to break this pattern. We wanted to show the students that actually the entire body is able to draw, that you can find a different way of drawing, and that those movements can be used for creative solutions. The same as challenging the brain while drawing the image you see in a mirror and not what you see directly, like you're getting an image of reality mirrored and translated, and you have to concentrate it on this distorted perspective. I don't have more examples here right now, but it also included other workshops like drawing what you actually cannot see, drawing blind, or drawing just with one line. So what you see here is are some examples of those drawings, and the 2 ones on the outside, they were drawn by body extensions. So people we still have more, you know. They put extensions to their body in the draw, and the one in the middle was a portrait, a self-portrait by the students drawn just with one line. We got more time, actually.
But okay. There's half an hour for us.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. No problem.
Wie lange haben wir denn geredet?
Noch eine Viertelstunde. Ja.
Eine Viertelstunde?
Ja,
you told us half hour.
Half hour is on the program?
Yes.
So we have another 15 minutes.
So can we continue?
No, then actually not.
No problem. I made a mistake.
So
okay?
We can continue.
You have a double slot, so please.
All right. Okay.
Which is your problem?
That you make me a bit nervous standing here, unfortunately. Yeah.
To control that everybody have the chance to talk.
It's just Yeah, we will continue. It's his time now. We separated the slots, that's why.
All right. So, this year in February we traveled with a group of 15 students and teachers to Khulna in Bangladesh to show the Wonder exhibition and to do research in the field of infrastructure. With the trip, we wanted to give these students the possibility to broaden their perspective about globalization and how the world is connected today in a good and a bad way. It's always hard to build your own opinion about things if you're not possible to see it with your own eyes. The first impression you have when you arrive in Bangladesh are the big contrasts. On the one hand, you'll find idyllic nature with not so many people and culture of farming and handicraft. On the other side, you'd see working conditions like 100 years ago with overcrowded cities and bad infrastructure. and the plastic problem and waste problem is a modern one. And of course, when you travel with civil engineers, you always visit landfill sites. So we also visited one near Kulna, and here we could see, smell, and learn how a landfill should not be working. There was no leakage protection or any other safety measures for the environment. But the interesting thing was that there was relatively less plastic garbage, because every garbage is a possible resource you can work with and even make a living out of it. Liz Barrow and me show a film on the 29th of May at the Art Academy about this topic, Handmade in Bangladesh. It shows the way people in Bangladesh see trash, like plastic bones and hair, as a resource. We also visited a fecal sludge treatment plant. As artists, you see the nice-looking garden, like tanks in which the feces are dried and cleaned. But in the end, we had to learn from the engineers that this plant has not been in use for quite a while. No trucks with feces arrived that day, so the plant couldn't work properly. In Chattogram, we tried to see the world-famous shipbreaking yards. It was very complicated to even get near them, because the workers don't want the public to know under what kind of bad circumstances they work. They were very afraid to lose their jobs. Everything from the ships is recycled, from engines over stairs to cable insulation. This part is a good thing for the environment. The process of tearing the ships apart is not. Another part of our excursion was to visit our partner universities in Kulna. Here we are at the Faculty of Art and Architecture at the Kulna University. The students show us their recent project. They worked on a standard size container to build a tiny house. One student was inspired by the original Bauhaus forms and colors, as you can see. So our exhibition took place from the 23rd to 26th of February at Kuwait, the Kulna University of Engineering and Technology. At the same time, the International Waste Safe Conference was held at the university, so we had an international audience. Here are some pictures from the installing of the exhibition, and some more pictures from the opening. And now we want to show some of the artworks the students and teachers developed for the exhibition and showed on various occasions. Some of the students that traveled with us to Rome today present their works later the day in another session. Here we have a work from Andreas Grahl. It's called Universe 3 and is made out of plastic bottles he collects from trash bins and on the streets. He connects them to a never-ending circle that is driven by a leaf blower. He puts styrofoam particles into the machine, which are blown in circles until they are shredded. The leaf blower itself can be switched on and off by the visitor and makes a very loud and annoying sound. It's like the cycle of life. It's a lot of fuss about nothing. Here we have a work from Lea Mattenklotz, and she produced shopping bags out of the plastic foil from Andalusia in Spain. Under this foil, many of the vegetables eaten in Europe are grown and harvested. We always want natural, fresh, good-looking and clean food, but the circumstances under which the food is produced are not that natural. Lea is also active in unions because the workers who do all the work for us are like modern slaves. So everything is connected, not only ecological or on engineering issues, also it's the social problems we should think about. To broaden the perspective, we want artists and engineers to get connected and share their individual point of view to this topic. Lea worked on the same topic in another attempt to to show the plastic problem the food industry generates. And with these very aesthetic photograms, she shows the same time the beauty and the horror of the plastic structure. It looks like a microscopic picture, but it's in fact original size like A4, the DIN A4 format. Here we have a work from Samira Gebhardt. It's called Sunday, and her artistic works are always material-driven, as we can see at the beginning of our presentation. And she works with materials that doesn't really go together. In this case, she uses clay and the styrofoam. And as you can see, the materials doesn't want to stick together. It's like our way of thinking and working with nature. We try to alter nature for our purpose, but in the end, nature resists. In a long and slow process, the clay falls off the styrofoam. The artist Mina Amini was born in Iran. She moved to Germany to study fine arts in Weimar. And after several arrivals and departures, packing suitcases and trying to take as much luggage from Iran as possible to Germany, she realized it was a futile attempt to create an Iranian home in Germany. All the memories, smells, colors, and tastes cannot be transported over the borders. Nevertheless, the suitcase lined with handmade tiles and filled with water shows her attempt to bring her home, Iran, to Germany. Caroline Gasse works with the combination of painting and real objects to create an illusion of a two-dimensional painting, which is actually a 3D one. Her work Leftovers focuses on the abandoned objects and traces of human presence. It shows things that may have been left behind after a gathering in a meal. It touches upon the different layers that food represents in our culture, such as bases of social interaction, as objects of manipulation through the media, and of course by the projection of waste. The artist Kaspar Kimmel is also a trained woodworker and carpenter, and with his work Future Wars, he plays with the idea what will happen if there's no wood or forest left. Maybe it is then worth fighting for. Candice Bachuba, her work is working with surgical instrument and rearrange them to a snowflake-like sculpture. The form of each instrument is determined by a specific surgical procedure. With the form of the snowflake, she attempts to change, enhance, and layer the reading of these threatening instruments by concentrating on their format and decorative qualities. As in nature, every snowflake is unique. The daily objects that surround us manifest a particular era in their form and construction and are valuable artifacts in an archaeological sense. What do objects reveal to us about the history of their use? How can objects extracted from the life situation be utilized in works of art? This work of Clara Freund plays with the idea of the Anthropocene in which we are now living right now. The Anthropocene era describes the world and nature as from mankind altered. Humans now have become the most important influencing factor in biological, geological, and atmospheric process. So what will the archaeologicals in maybe 1,000 years will find out about our present era now?
Yeah, so this is my work that I will show. It's called Care, and it's an artistic geological approach to a personal exploration of the absence of memories. Visible on a low screen is a video documenting the process of root washing of a small spruce. In front of it, sorted by material, the leaching. earth, torn off roots, and leftovers. Each of these small shells and bones and stones feed the narrative of the tree and thus that of its owner. It emphasizes the impact of trees on the cultural, spiritual, and economical development of human beings.
So, all right, and we want to close our session with the group picture from Bangladesh and want to remind you of our exhibition at Sala Uno. So, tomorrow is the opening at 6 p.m. That's it.
Thank you and sorry for the misunderstanding. C'è qualcosa che non va. And now? We are coming back to the last contributions from Sapienza University. This is Nicoletta Trasi, the next speaker, and the title of her presentation is Fragile Landscapes from Dump to Park, 2 case studies. And you can see now a different approach again that involve the landscape. Thank you.
Thank you first of all to Patrizia Tovalusci to invite me to this interesting seminar. I prefer to read so I can stay for 50 minutes. If not, I think that's a problem. This short intervention deals the relationship between design and landscape, circumscribing it in fragile landscapes, whose fragility is caused by anthropic causes. For example, extractive activity and so on. The 2 designs presented today here, even though they are in geographic and cultural areas that are completely different, the first in Spain and the second in Egypt, we will talk about possibly one of the weakest and most polluted, most degraded, most refused landscapes in current opinion, and as such about the difficult design challenge to requalify these areas, the West dumps. It is very interesting for me to talk about the possibility of coming to a redevelopment project of those landscapes that overcomes the needs of the balance of the ecosystems involved in the intervention environments with the artistic writing of contemporary testimony. In the first case, the first case is in an extra-urban context near Barcelona, and the second case is in the center of Cairo city. However, both of the sites have been used for gathering the solid urban waste of Cairo and of Barcelona for centuries. And therefore, once they were no longer used as dumps, they were subject to very necessary and heavy cleanup operation to endow them with a new life. Come si può fermare questa? Perché la vorrei bloccare un attimo. Perché sennò sta andando troppo avanti. Sì, però sta andando troppo avanti. Se si può fermare è meglio. Ok, thank you. It is possible to distinguish three temporal phases. three temporal phases in this kind of places, such as mines, as dumps, or other similar contexts. The first is that of function, in which the place is potentially used to the maximum, and in which it is possible to say that the site lives. The second is that of the mission, in which the site is exhausted, therefore can no longer produce, so it assumes an abandoned and melancholic look in which one could say it is dead. The third phase is that of a possible new life with new function, in which the site will live again in a different way than it did before. Now, this is the slide. I believe that it's very, very important in this type of restoration project that the fragility of the site in question is not hidden as an embarrassment, but that is in some way revealed. A very good example is this example that you can look Bixby Park by American landscapist Georgia Graves, which was made from the largest urban dump in San Francisco, through a very interesting abstraction of the natural and anthropic processes in the area, which channels its unique characteristics, the waste. The form of the earth is an excrescence of landfill, of scales, of marshes, of wind, of sky. Small hills and mounds of earth united in large groups create elevated areas where people can sit and let the breeze blow by them, while the symbolic reference to the mounds of refuse that were present in the site for years are still there. I retain that this is the right reaction to have in regards to these types of place, because we are facing a pluralism in landscape that has conquered the aesthetics of new scenes. From the conquest of 800 with the mountain and the sea, we have substituted the conquest of the desert, of the tropical forest, the swamps, and so on. If in the past, landscape sought out and instituted beauty, puoi fermare perché c'è un tempo che purtroppo blocca un attimo, grazie. Sì, è meglio manuale, purtroppo. Guarda, se vuoi sederti qua magari mi dai una mano, resti sulla 3, che mi dispiace se no si crea un po' di pasticcio. Adesso stiamo sulla 2. We have substituted the conquest of the desert, the tropical forest, the swamps, and so on. If in the past the landscape sought out and instituted beauty, today it accepts being contaminated with ugliness, leftovers, the refuse of culture and of the city, As the French landscapist Bernard Lassus says, it is more easy to imagine that a polluted area can produce a beautiful landscape, and inversely, that a non-polluted area is not necessarily beautiful. Contemporary art, and above all the land art, played a very important role in that concept by giving special attention to the existence of these fragile and refused spaces. I believe that thanks to the viewpoint of certain artists and photographers, and as well as filmmakers, that these degraded places have been taken into consideration, and with them the idea of trash or refuse. From an aesthetic point of view, their viewpoint manages to go beyond the banal or usual to grasp that which, for good and for bad, in the essence of these unspeakable places that are extraneous for us and unclassifiable. They, the artists, distort our methods of recognition and looking at things which are generally founded on the traditional aesthetic categories. That which we can interpret from them is probably more acute and more penetrating, and that has, without doubt, opened new roads for landscapists, for architects, and for city planner who works in these areas. Now, the landscape restoration of the first case in Spain, near Barcelona, is the landscape restoration project of the controlled dump site of La Val d'en Joan, that is located in Parc del Garraf, within the municipal borders of Begues and Gavà, in the Baix Llobregat region. Since 1974, it is used as a rubbish dump. Not only most of the Barcelona urban waste, but also for other cities in the metropolitan area. Nowadays, it has a size of 16 hectares. The restoration project, made by the Spanish landscape architects Batlle i Roig, defines a pattern of topographic configuration with terraces, side slopes, drainage system of internal fluid separated by external drainage net, biogas extraction, pathways and plantation by phases. The whole restoration project goal is that Parc del Garraf absorb the dump by using the local forest tissue and supporting the establishment of primary ecosystems, and its development and succession, which through the time will turn to adapted situation to the site environment. The plantation process is done through strong local spaces with a few pouring demand and already adapted to the place environment. The vegetal structure, planned with different local sort of shrubs and trees, organized the plantation project. Waste deposit restoration seeks to return the public use of this area. The proximity to urban areas, access and parking facilities make of it a well-linked site, as well a new entrance or gate to the Parc Natural of Garraf, which is also in connection with the big infrastructure like the highway, long-distance highway. From the landscape point of view, the project is divided into a series of terraces marked by a pedestrian and vehicular path that zigzags rise to the peak of what was once a mountain of waste. The project deals with the issue of redevelopment in a very sensitive and refined way, and tries to never make visitors forget the origin of the place. Hence, the idea of punctuating the path with totems made with a wire mesh that contains bales of waste. A strong ecological awareness blends admirably with a clear artistic dimension that can be found the design of the new soil and in the presence of artistic and metaphorical elements. And rightly, in my opinion, this project has received many awards in different recent years. Okay, the second, okay, questi sono the awards. The second project, the design for Al-Azhar Park, fits into a vast project of urban restoration of the Darb al-Amar, it's a urban area of Cairo, and area along a tract of the perimeter's wall of the citadel in the Cairo city. The new park is the driving element for the entire operation. Here, an hill of 300 hectares of waste, the urban dump of Cairo city, after 500 years of existence, has found a new life. A lady resident in this area says, "Before I saw a huge mountain of dirt, dust and rats. Now I see orange flowers, a carpet of grass, and palm trees." The new park, whose construction
I know that I disturbed
Finito? Finish?
1
2
and a
minutes.
half.
1 e mezzo.
Yes.
Vai. The new park whose construction, I synthesize. The new park whose construction began in 1997 with the cultural and economic support of Aga Khan Trust was born following a complex recuperation operation. You can imagine thousands of tons of earth and rubble, many cubic meters of earth underwent to geotechnical treatment, like washing, sifting, etc. And then mixed with special sand and vegetable earth to cover the site with a layer of a good vegetable soil, around 2 meters thick. The architectural character of the park is woven throughout with its Islamic patrimony. A green area includes a garden of citrus trees and rows of palm trees. A long marble pathway with an arabesque design leads to an extraordinary belvedere. From the point of view of landscape, the park is divided in different areas. The backbone is represented by a long water channel. This linear system of water fed by untreated waters of the Nile and strongly marked by a marble pathway that limited on all edge, lay in contrast to the system of walkways and dryways, which is fluid and sinuous within ample green space. This strong presence of water, if one side is a reminder of Persian tradition in the use of canals and fountains, the other side is a big ecological attention. In fact, the water is mechanically filtered and pumped into the system of irrigation for the entire park. And I conclude this project. Now we have just to wait to see this new landscape adult and be able to forget that some landscapists had passed by it before. Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, but we have a very tight schedule as our student has to have the chance to explain their works, and
Thank you.
we just have only one day. to exchange our experience. And let me introduce the next talk by the Professor Adriana Sperra, this colleague from Sapienza. The title is Reuse and Recycle of Building Waste in Industry 4.0, Off-site Components and Digitalization of the Production Processes. Thank you, Adriana.
Only the title is so longer. Don't worry about it.
Thank you for the understanding.
Good afternoon. Well, the first thing that I want to say is thanks to the Professoressa Trovalucci for this opportunity. My speech is related to reuse and recycle of building waste in Industry 4.0, off-site components and digitalization of the production process. Talking about waste means communicating awareness and respect for the environment. Working on two levels, individual and collective. Every single citizen must perceive that his or her contribution, although tiny, has a positive effect. Otherwise, he or she tends to lose interest sooner or later. On the collective scale, there are the protocols, the various conference. What's wrong with the microphone? Okay. Okay. No, okay. Okay, perfect. On the collective scale, there are the protocols, the various conference of the parties that defines the policies of the various states. And everyone should contribute to disposing of at least some of the waste produced. By drafting the overall picture, we need to highlight the global and local dimension of the environmental issue, some effects, some catastrophic effects, and some causes. In this context, waste is the tangible effect of the current economic development model that uses and misspends raw materials, and furthermore, it produces more waste than it is able to reabsorb, with all the economic contradiction that this entails. The actual waste management fosters illegality due to the fact that the waste is exported and those who sell it get paid, but not those who buy it. To intervene on such a cycle effectively means to promote the circular economy that is able to match compatibility of sustainability at economical, social, and environmental level. A good example is represented by many little and sustainable projects developed by scientists in partnership with local communities with the aim of saving something they know and love, with the evident results combining social and environmental justice. Okay, I really appreciate and almost envy and congratulate for this topic initiative having this issue, the artistic manipulation of objects, upcycle, and the invention of architectural forms to be used as containers for the carrying out and exposure of these activities. But I can only give a contribution regarding what I studied and what I know. And to increase the awareness of every single actor, I'm enforced to deal with waste and building waste, coming from a production sector that represents 50% of GDP, responsible for around 45% of the total waste produced, which should reabsorb its waste, or at least part of it. A production sector that will produce more and more waste. If we don't want to consume more soil, we have to refurbishment, bring into a low conformity, demolish and rebuild buildings, suburbs, and cities. In fact, according to the Eficiencia Ambiente report, the 19th April 2019, within 2 years, only 2 years, the landfills will be saturated throughout the country. In Italy, 135 million tons of special waste and about 30 of urban waste are produced every year. To manage the waste emergency, 10 billion euros are needed. And in this context, where does the building waste come from? Okay. Waste produced by partial demolitions of buildings due to renovation, energy efficiency upgrade, refunctionalization, compliance with the legislation. In Italy, almost one-fifth of Italian homes, over 2 million properties, are in poor conditions, at risk of collapse due to their old age. The other way to have waste, where does building waste come from? Waste of entire buildings due to sudden collapses, total demolitions, wars, natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, and floods. And the waste from demolition of buildings not complying with the building code or with the urban planning regulations. This is the dimension of the waste problem that affect and compromise our survival. How to manage them. If the economic model must become circular, it must be industrialized. Building sector must become building 4.0. The goal is that it reuses and recycles at least a part of the waste it produces. Industry 4.0 means the complete digitalization of production processes along the entire supply chain, thanks to the interconnection of the different phases by the massive use of devices and technological platforms, internet, cloud computing, big data, etc. This is the fourth industrial revolution, and it follows the transformation of production thanks to the first one, coal and steam energy, the second one, mass production with the assembly line, and the third, automation and computer. The fourth revolution took the first steps in Europe, starting from Hanover in Germany in 2010. The objectives or the goals, efficiency and collaboration that starts inside one company and little by little involves other companies, including supply chain, cost reduction, better margins in growth, and a faster response time to the market demand. To avoid this scenario, we have to industrialize. And industrialize means digitalization of the entire building process, from planning, programming, design, implementation, management, due to facility management and home automation or domotic, each phase, including selective disposal to control waste, and use of site production technologies to minimize inefficiencies. The use of building information modeling, BIM, for predicting and minimizing construction waste, and the useful of the big data technologies are inherently suitable for BIM due to the support of storing and processing in real-time large data sets. Designing by using waste, we have two options. Using waste from the construction sector, and we have an example, the building realized with waste-based brick produced by Stone Clay Cycle, a Dutch startup that collect materials from demolition within a radius of 100 kilometers. Using waste for the construction sector, another example, the California Academy of Science at San Francisco by Renzo Piano Building Workshop built using materials from the demolition of the previous museum and waste materials from local industry. Another way, using waste from other sectors. An example, the university facilities in the port of Le Havre reused containers turned into 4 floors housing units. And the last example, using waste from another sectors. An example that like components for the building envelope through the upcycle of tires with high thermal and acoustic performance according to the Italian building energy regulations. This project was carried out by Citera, Centro Research of the Sapienza of Rome. This is the second two ways, using waste from other sectors for building components. I finish, and I thank you for attention, for your time, and really, again, congratulations for the focus of this meeting.
Public really appreciate your conciseness and effectiveness. Now we will come back to landscape architecture, and I want to invite the last speaker, Maria Beatrice Andreucci, that is coming directly from New York. The title of her talk is Design Out of Waste in Landscape Architecture and Land Art. Thank you, Beatrice, for coming. Right now.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, let me thank Professor Travalusci for giving me this opportunity to present really last minute, because as said, I was in New York City for the EDRA 50-year conference, and the nice thing was that it was really in the most famous landfill in the world, because I was in Freshkills, so I had the opportunity to include these incredible case studies in my presentation. As we all know, the concept of ecological restoration of landfill is certainly not new. I'm sure you all know Parc de Bouchemont in Paris, which was realized back in 1887 by architect Alphand. If you look at this historical drawing, we can see certainly that the concept at that time, and has been so for a long time, was actually to conceal, to hide the waste. So the concept was really a beautification process. This is the park as it is today, 25 hectares in Paris, currently the third most important project realized during the Haussmann period. Suddenly, I would say around 1960s, the whole concept has been changing towards a much more active trash and waste management and sanitation. This is the Parc Ariel Sharon, constructed in Tel Aviv by landscape architect Peter Latz from Germany. And this is a very special exhibition made out of trash. You have to imagine that 1,000 soldiers have been constructed out of 20,000 tons of waste. So actually you can see a big shift from hiding the waste to actually reclaiming how much important it is. And the message of this exhibition was in fact that we are all soldiers and we need to do something to be active in this field. So yeah, promoting really an active trash culture. Again, this is another extremely important case study coming from the Ruhr Valley, because we know that this has been a huge site. And the concept has been really to celebrate the interface of science, technology, and society, investigating how many relationships and multiple benefits can be provided to an active landscape restoration of post-industrial sites. This is again in the Ruhr Valley, and I think that this Pluto spoil tape is particularly attractive because it shows actually how those places can become really a place of enjoyment and giving the opportunity to the people who actually have to face the stress of the urban built environment, the opportunity to enjoy and to have recreational opportunities. This is again from Pluto's spoiled Ruhr Valley, and I think what is also interesting is this socio-ecological reconnection strategy, because you have to imagine that those soils, after, say, this process started in the Ruhr Valley, I'm sure that the German colleagues know it very, very well, started back in the 80s. So nowadays we have a totally different ecological environment, being that really this industrial forest. So the opportunity also to experience and to do research in biodiversity. And again, this is also the opportunity to show artworks for the people. And another aspect which I think is interesting from this picture is related to topography. The topography is a key aspect because actually all these former landfill have been producing totally different topography on site, and this is something which is also very important for the population, maybe experience daily landscapes in terms of being totally flat. I think that the huge revolution in design out waste has been produced by the female artist Eukilis. Eukilis, she's really the pioneer in the maintenance art, and she has been, and she's still today, the artist in residence in the sanitary department of New York City. I think that this specific performance, touch, sanitation, handshakes ritual that she performed with the workers of the New York City Department of Sanitation between 1977 and 1998 has been really the outbreak of this totally new concept, meaning we don't really want to hide the waste and the trash anymore, but really need to understand that we need to reconcile and to think hard in terms of circular economy and whatever we want to do. And so this is the famous place I'm coming from, Fresh Kills in Staten Island in New York City, and you have to imagine this is a 900 hectare site, so the largest ever reconversion project in the world. This was started back in 1948, because you have to imagine that at that time people used to throw trash into the ocean. And at a certain point, a resolution came, and they decided that it was not important anymore. Actually, would have been much better to introduce a sanitary site, but this was meant to be temporary. But after only 7 years, this was already the largest ever infrastructure constructed by man. Must be said that this was the renovation project, the sanitation project started in 2001 in March, but unfortunately 6 months later, it happened September 11. So, and there is today, still today, there is a major class action against the Department of Sanitation in New York City, because lots of remnants of the construction site of the Twin Towers are there on the west mount of the site. So there are several controversial aspects, but definitely today I want to talk to a specific aspect, which is the one related to time frame. As you can see, growing a new parkland requires a lot of time. And actually, the needs and the spirit of the whole operation, the concept was done by James Corner Field Operation. He won this competition back in 2001, and they decided that people cannot wait until 2035. So the whole aspects and the whole strategies implemented by the sanitary department of New York City was actually to introduce specific artworks in between. So the park now has thousands of events each year. There are millions of people, tourists, but also, of course, resident people coming for a special occasion. And the art is actually trying to celebrate the renovation of those degraded land. And I think this is something which is very peculiar. And I have the pleasure to show you something which has been shot over the weekend. So I have the permission to show to you this specific artwork, which is pretty unique because it's one of the first time in which the environmental aspects are celebrated through music. meaning that the actual scores of the music have been designed through the different sound made by the environmental elements and system on site in Freshfields. So this is a cello player, Robert Black, and he's producing different sounds, and those sounds will be projected on several screens in a continuous exhibition, which will be held very, very soon in New York. And I would like to finish my presentation with this happy me climbing the Halde in Gelsenkirchen, because I think it's important to highlight how much research is important in this field. We really need to strive. This is a project, ongoing project, which is called Restore, Rethinking Sustainability towards a regenerative approach, and it's very much important to bridge, industry, research, and education, exactly like the course carried on by Professor Trovalusci. And so I thank you very much and wish you all the best for the continuation of the workshop.
Thank you, Beatrice, for your talk. Very interesting. And at last, we can invite our students to exchange both by Weimar University and Sapienza. No, not together. The first group is from Bauhaus University. And how many you? I think that you can stay all together here and use these two microphones. Students of the Bauhaus University Weimar interpret the objects and the installations of the Bauhaus 100 and exhibition, in some cases reassessing material. Thank you for coming, and please show your experience to all of us.
Thank you. Ciao a tutti. Permettetemi di rappresentare il nostro team di ingegneri ambientali e artisti. Questo Christoph, Sophie, David, Ilona, Tobias, Eva, Clara, and Hans. So let me start with our presentation with a project made by the engineers. And we wanted to show people these manifestations of materials in the world, especially about plastic. So we got a really big problem with plastic, and this problem is like an iceberg. We only see the peak outside the water, but the real problem is at the bottom. So we want to also to talk about what recycling means and how working waste separation system works, and how good could it be if we do that? Yes, because we see a lot of pollution at this moment in the world and a lot of waste, and maybe it is a good idea if we treat this waste in an appropriate way, and maybe we can find better solutions for these problems. We also did a water column with PET flakes, and these PET flakes, they go to the surface with air bubbles, and they go again, but in the opposite, they sink because of the density, and it is like snow, and that's why we call it marine snow. So we also wanted to show people how important it is that we think about these plastics, and we have to find a solution.
Good afternoon, everybody. That's my work called Cover 2, and my work consists of plastic waste. All this material for this work I found it in the nature places, and I think that is not the right places for so much waste. And I think we have oh god. I need a moment. Okay, I found all this material in the places I said. Okay, and for me, it's more than, or it's an anonym portrait. It's more than a portrait. It's a symbol. A symbol, maybe more than a symbol. It's a reflection of time. It's my reaction of our time. Here, I think it's enough for me.
Well, hello. I'm Clara. So, I can scream. I think my voice is pretty loud. So, I call this work Wagen Suitcase because way before we had planes flying all over the planet, we had ships. And on these ships we had plant hunters who were traveling through the world and trying to find new plants. And what actually made a case in which the plants did not die while traveling. So before this case, the plants were like 70% of them died, or 90% of them died, and now 70% of them survived. And I took this idea and made it into a suitcase. So now, when you go somewhere and travel somewhere, you can bring your own food. And you can grow your own food, and you can bring plants from all over the world to your home or somewhere else. And you don't need a 2-meter big chest made from wood anymore.
Nicht nochmal. Warte. Okay. A pregnant sperm whale washed up in Sardinia had 22 kilograms of plastic in its stomach. That was in the CNN news on the 1st of April this year, but it's sadly now an April's Fool's joke, but it's reality. And I wonder if I used some of the plastic of which this whale died. And whenever I hear of another animal that dies of our trash, it really breaks my heart. And whenever I see the pollution happening right now and how people still deal with trash, it really leaves me speechless. And so, yeah, we came from the ocean. Life comes from the ocean. Like most of our oxygen produced by the plankton comes from the ocean, and still every minute one full truck of garbage with plastic is dumped into the ocean. And this video you're going to see is my artistic confrontation with this issue. How we treat our environment is also how we treat ourselves.
yeah, that's the next project. That's a project from us as a civil, as an environmental engineer. And I give you a short overview from the background of the project. And the topic name is from a digestate to a digestate product, or from a fermentation residue to a fermentation residue product. And yeah, as we heard before, a fermentation residue product is the rest from the production of biogas. And the question was, what can we do with the rest of the fermentation? So we got a lot of thoughts how we can explain it. And we decide to explain it very easy so that everyone can understand it. And that's our work. So it's not a kind of art, but a little bit, it's a kind of engineer art. So the engineers try to explain their art in us, yeah. And now David explained some details. Okay, before we got 3 little kinds and 3 parts of the project.
So, as you can see, we've made a wooden plate, including a circle. We call it the circle of nutrients. So this plate is containing 4 main stations. The first station is the agricultural farming. So we have some plants growing up, and all the plants contain those nutrients we've been talking about before. So mainly potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen. So all these nutrients are binded into the plant, into the organic material, and this organic product will be fed to the animals in livestock farmings, for example, in the agriculture. So the animals are eating those kind of food, and yeah, well, you all know, separated in kind of feces and urine. So we collect all those feces, forward it into a so-called fermentation plant, and there are some kind of microbacteria which is able to get some energy out of these organic materials, and mainly consisting of methane. And this methane will be used to generate electric energy, what further on will be used to get electricity for urban energy systems, or in our case here as an example for the tractor, and can be used as a kind of renewable energy all over the world. So in Germany, this kind of system is well maintained nowadays, started in 2010, and we want to express what is possible with the nutrients in all organic products. And the outcome of this product will be explained by my colleague Ilona.
Yeah, the specific topic was from the residue to the product. So to take a different point of view, to see the value in the material is not a new idea, but to better visualize the idea of the product, we designed the nutrient power balls. It's a simple idea. They're made of dried fermentation residue and grass and rolled up to balls, and are full of nutrients, and you can put it onto your soil, and they support the growing of your plants. That's a simple idea. And when you come to Sala Une, and you can see it and smell it, and
And take one.
So in the last part of our tomatoes, we plant the seed into soil with low nutrients, and after a few weeks, we put at some potato plants, we put the fermentation residue, and it's just an experiment where we can see what happens with the plants with the more nutrients and the plants without. And so if you want to see our tomatoes and the experiment, you also come to Sala Uno. And so thank you for your time, and that's all.
See you tomorrow.
And last but not least, I want to invite these students from Sapienza. They are graduated students from the atelier lab recyclings that I introduced this morning, and the students will show their projects elaborated during this experience in connection with the municipal hygiene company of Rome, AMA.
Se volete usare i microfoni mi conviene sedervi.
Forse conviene che vi mettete in due.
No, pure tutte e due.
Good afternoon to all. My name is Marina Landolfi and I graduated 2 years ago after attending the workshop Reuse Center and Ecological Island. The theme we worked on was the experimentation of these new architectural types. I chose the site of Cacciuta because the characteristics like size, urban destination and location allowed a lot of design freedom. The concept of this project starts from wanting to give a strong formal and symbolic value. To develop the form, I started from the number 2, which represent recycling, reuse, and second life to give to things. The symbolic value is instead based on the theme of the bee and the beehive, as they symbolize the rebirth, the value of the ideal society, the development of the territory, the organization, industriousness, and civic virtue. In my references, in order to have flexibility and modularity of the space, hexagonal form is used. In fact, in my project, the choice of the hexagon derives from both functional and formal reasoning. The project is developed in 2 different dimensions. The area for the movement of the vehicles is in fact lowered to 1.5 meters. There are 2 accesses, one for users and one for vehicles. Internally, the reuse center is a completely versatile space, thanks to large sliding walls. Another theme linked to the beehive is the development that is realized with the creation of an educational laboratory and space for the community aimed at talking about these issues. Island and center formally are very similar, if not identical, except for the fact that in the reuse center we have acoustical and thermic isolation. The structure consists on a reinforced concrete pillar to which laminated wood beams are anchored. Inside the pillar there is a stainless steel disc that collects rainwater for use. The link between the pillar and the beams takes place by means of a steel crown that is designed to be stuck on the pillar and bolted to the plates of primary beams. The latter are enclosed by a carb, also in laminated wood, which also serves as a connection between the various hexagonal modules. I have also set up an air conditioning system in the area, and after a preliminary lighting calculation, I also did a study on the photovoltaic system for energy production for lighting the complex. The final view represents an architecture capable of presenting itself as a repeatable and recognizable model. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Irene. My project is based on 2 basic concepts, refusal and circular economy. So how an object can have a second use, a second life with the same or different form. I've based myself on the most common element of recycling, which is a crumpled piece of paper on the daily routine of common gestures, of how this piece of paper is thrown away and then collected, folded, and as from this processing of the fold of the sheet of paper, you can give a second life to the object of waste. So how we can link the theme of recycling with architecture through the art of origami. I choose a shape that resembles a pinwheel as it creates a circular movement, always referring to what is the concept of the circular economy. I wanted to take up two fundamental points of origami, the continuity and the modularity, resume them in my project in the continuity of the cover and in the modularity of the shapes and the spaces. The project is composed of a part used at an ecological island and a reuse center. The ecological island provides 16 crates in which the waste can be delivered by a platform. Maintaining the same kind of modular and systematic design for the use center, I designed then 5 rectangular modules joined together through an aisle, inserting a sort of green platform that is a space accessible to all users and of the reuse center, and that also can be used a second access to the same models. I have kept 6 key points in the characteristics of the material that I use, both in the reuse center and in the cover, such as the reversibility of the material, the affordability, the eco-sustainability, and the resistance, the prefabricated material and modular material. The reuse center consists in 5 modules in Islam, with the addition of a ventilated facade, which helps to prevent the deterioration of the material. The whole project is covered by a tensile structure with a membrane and roofs. The structural elements are the pillars, which have a different inclination and different height. This is because I wanted to keep the shape of the pinwheel, to give it always movement and to keep the canvases in tension. Next to the pillars, we find some tubes whose node is resolved by a hinge made of steel, to which will be later welded a channel of drainage, on which will be fixed the canvas. That is because there are international drains of the color. Thank you.
Good evening, I am Claudia, and this is my project for a youth center near the ecologic island Bufalotta. Let's start with the concept. The idea is based on the life cycle thinking that is focused on environmental, social, and economic impact of a product, from cradle to grave. In this case, this thinking is applied to time, on the structure and on the product process and sold in it. So, from this graphic, we have the plant transposition, the division in 3 sectors like the function, the rise in volume, and after the skeleton. And this is the first result. Here we have some final image of the exterior, where you can see the changes in a regular form that hosts a central square, the meeting point of the neighborhood, and that became a lantern and a symbol in the night. The building is developed on 3 levels. On the ground floor, there is the entrance with the desk and the temporary storage. Next, the craft workshop, and after, the shop with a coffee bar. At the ground level, there are the services and the permanent storage. On the first floor, that covers just a part of the 3rd volume, creating a double-eye space, there is the exhibit of the upcycle articles. You can see this division in the section and the shunting movement of the building in the elevation, which symbolized the growth out of the value of the product. Here we are at the last topic of material and technologies. No, okay. In the first volume, I used those cladding panels by the sugarcane residue that are recycled and biodegradable. In the craft workshop, we can see better the use of 2 technologies for improved thermal condition and have economic and ecological saving. mobile sunblind, and photovoltaic glass on the ceiling. In the third volume, the exhibitor are realized by carbon fibers, recycled and recyclable, like the steel structure and most of the material used for the structure, to guarantee the bus life cycle. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Giovanni Cintu and I develop a reuse center. There's an important point between creating a building for a reuse of consumer goods and the significance this must to have to the population. It must be a recognizable place that inspire the curiosity and interaction with the population. Because of this, my project is inspired in an hourglass, symbolizing an object that gives more time to the life of all goods instead of wasting them. This building will create an image. Of newest opportunity for the community to find a way to contribute towards not producing more waste and to find cheaper and more eco-friendly goods in a suggestive building. In an hourglass, we find two parts. Lies horizontally symmetrically opposite. In the project, these two parts consist on first a reception and storage, facing to the ecological island, and then an exhibition and sales area in the second part, facing to the street. One important function for the reuse center is the reparation area. The hourglass shape symbolizes the two parts of the process, the old being transformed into the new as a sand passing from the one part from another in renovation. This function actually takes place in the basement. A lift takes the old goods down to be worked, and then the goods emerge rejuvenated on the other end, making the point of transition between the reception and the sales area. On this floor, we find different workshops of various materials, together with a big storeroom and technical rooms. The project for the reuse center is located in the vicinity of the ecological island and serve as an alternative place for the deposit of old goods. Open to it with a glass wall to persuade people to bring their old goods to this building. At the same time, a large glass wall is opened diagonally to the street, creating a large showcase to the city. The building is entirely projected with recycled materials, laminated wood, glass and aluminum, and reinforces concrete. It's also built with eco-friendly materials like wood fiber insulation and formworks in recycled plastic. Roof titles in galvanized steel are prepared to position photovoltaic panels, allowing the placement of 125 photovoltaic panels in the roof. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabriele De Logu, and with my colleague Luca Lanni, we are involved in city planning. And today we have the honor and pleasure to present our study, which deals with territorial planning of the municipal solid waste management cycle. The focus of our study is to propose a method of analytical research that allows us to identify areas suitable for the optimal location of new structures, aimed at a sustainable waste management cycle, thanks to the use of the geographic information system technology. The study is divided into parts. The first, more theoretical, concerns the search for an applicable method that can be used also in other contexts, while the second part, more practical, refers to specific case studies. In order to find a suitable method, we started from the following strategic lines. First, we elaborated a model of the ideal city. Then we analyzed the model of the real city. And finally, we overlapped and compared those two models to achieve our goal, which is planning a city by implementing the existing network of structures in order to make the municipal solid waste management cycle more sustainable from an environmental, social, and economic point of view. How should a city be like? The model of the ideal city was developed on the basis of sustainability requirements and criteria. How the city is actually. The model of the real city instead has been analyzed from a territorial and statistical point of view. Surely for the future, we would like to combine this method with a process of active participation of the population. I now give the floor to my colleague for the second part of the study.
Good afternoon. First of all, we have to say that locating areas is a geographical issue. So it requires a special way of thinking than that the method we developed was defined through the use of GIS software, which is a computer-based tool that analyzes, stores, manipulates, and visualizes that geographic information, usually in a map, with the purpose of functioning as a decision support system. We have proposed 2 case studies to apply the research method, localize suitable areas for hosting service centers and composting plants on the entire municipality of Rome. For both cases, after a careful preliminary territorial and regulatory analysis, we set the same parameters, but with different values for each of the case studies. And with a GIS software, we carried out a series of special analysis that allowed us to obtain univocal results to propose to the decision maker that was the final choice. So at the end of the process, we achieved 20 new areas to adapt network of waste treatment installation for EMA Roma. In particular, we proposed 13 areas for service centers and 7 areas for hosting composting plants. Thank you for your attention. There is a work of our colleagues that unfortunately today he couldn't be here.
Hello everybody, I'm Agnese, and the site of my bachelor project is located in the northeast area of Rome, in which there is an existing and working eco-island. The aim of the thesis was to design a reuse center and a reuse market, and the concept comes from the recycling loop idea. And moreover, the physical structure of the site allows a circular structure for the new project. The inspiration for the plan comes from the Dominican Sisters Convent in Pennsylvania by Louis Kahn, and according to the special structure of Kahn's project and to the recycling loop icon, I defined the functions arrangement of my plan. And as you can see, the spaces and The functions as well are sequentially articulated in a way that they remind to the reuse phases. So we have the delivery point where the citizens drop off what they want to get rid of. There's an office, of course, connected to the delivery point. And there's the check to use point, a space where workers can check the condition of the goods before storing them, of course. There, the storage area, the restoration fixing area, and the changing rooms and toilets connected to the reuse market. Moreover, the plan is designed in order to ensure three different and independent paths: the way to the reuse market, the way to the eco-island, and the way to the reuse center. Moreover, I followed up two different kinds of detailed studies. One is about the framework, for which I used reinforced concrete pillars and beams, and two different kinds of prefab roofing elements. These in order to cover spaces with different widths. The last study is about the geothermal system, and in the project there are two technical spaces in which there is one air handling unit that is fed by 5 or 6 probes. And one important theme, it was the landscape integration that has been possible thanks to the hypogeum structure and to the green roof and to the wood used for the elevation. As you can see, the structure is mainly hypogeum, except for the volume where there are offices and the technical space, and the reuse market has mainly a double height. Thank you.
So, good afternoon. Hello, my name is Filippo Merlani, and so I design in my project an ecological island and a center of the reuse. So my project is based on 3 concepts: decontextualization, form, and structure. First of all, the ecological island is an area used for a temporary storage of non-organic waste, organized in a differentiated way to be reused. Decontextualized because being in a degraded area, the will is to include all the function inside the building and to redevelop the surrounding context. The shape is predominant because it refers to an element of nature, the leaf. In addition to formalism, it also gives an important structural trim, since the ribs will become a supporting element of the building. So we can see we find of the ground floor, the ecological island, where there are some very important travel flow. At the center, the lawyers deposit the objects. At the side, the citizen with the urban vehicle deposit them in the chests. You can also leave your car at the parking, and on foot you can arrive to upstairs to the center of the reuse. Upstairs there is a bar next to the exhibition hall, a sanitization center for objects, workshops, and an area where objects are right to be transported. So just leave as much space as possible to the transit of vehicle. A structure has been created in which the attic of the first floor is hung to some steel roots connected to the reticular structure of the arch, interconnect by a frame that support the substructures of the aluminum panels and the large skylight designed to bring in as much natural light as possible. The slab is made up of 2 steel beams, a raw sheet metal, a concrete yet with welded mesh, the insulation, and the squid and the floor. Finally, since the first floor is isolated from the lower floor, A forced air system with air inhale and extraction has been designed. They are systems that allow you to manage the air exchange of environment with the outside. This happens without the opening or windows or door to four ventilation ducts connecting the interior to vacuum cleaners and diffusers. The last consideration is about photovoltaics, as they have been put photovoltaic panels on the cover of the parking spaces in order to ensure a self-sufficient electrical need. Thank you for watching.
Thank you to everybody. And now we have time for the last short tea break, and that you can enjoy at the next door. And we will see here in 15 minutes for the final discussion with our guests.